And it's that kind of stripping it back down to call to action, the most exciting content possible, overlaying with words and music that might be appropriate, but getting on with it. 10-second videos are doing really, really well.
My name's Peter Sumpton, and this is the Marketing Study Lab podcast. A podcast for those that are thinking, have thought and are doing, or already have a marketing qualification. But there's a little bit of something for everyone, as we cover a whole host of marketing topics. I chat to some amazing guests, each one a superstar in their own niche. And if you have a burning marketing question already, or after this episode, get in touch. We'll chat it through. peter@marketingstudylab.co.uk, or find me on LinkedIn. The link is in the show notes. If you'd like to leave a review on iTunes, this will really help others find this podcast and spread the marketing word. Now let's get on with today's episode. In this week's episode, we take a look at McKinsey's 7 S's, an internal framework. Find out more later. First, we're going to chat with Kevin Tewis-Allen, a chap with one of the most impressive, if a little random, resumes. Kevin has worked for anyone and everyone, from being the CMO at Street Soccer Foundation, which we'll discuss later, to the marketing advisor at number 10 Downing Street. I think he's the first guest to hold that accolade, so kudos, Kevin. He's also worked for UNILAD, founded a music production house, and also worked for most of the top 250 FTSE firms in order to help them improve their business through improved customer strategy, as well as being a leading expert of what we currently class as Gen Z, whether you love that expression or hate it, and we'll discuss that later as well. So with such a varied career, there was only one place to start our chat. Kevin, have you ever been starstruck?
Yes, I have.
Okay.
And it was when I met Janet Jackson.
Oh, wow. How did that happen?
I went to a party in London, which was American Independence Day. And my friend is her choreographer and still is. And we went along. She hosted a private party. And I got to meet her, sit next to her and have my photo done, which was incredibly surreal. I've met more famous people than her in my life, but she was just such a lovely energy.
Wow.
And it was just like hearing Michael speak in your ear. It was bizarre, very bizarre. So she was my moment when I went, wow, that was the coolest thing.
Yeah, that is brilliant. I think interview over with that one. There's nowhere to go. No, sorry. On a serious note, tell us your story. Okay, what's brought you to this stage in your career as a Gen Z expert, an entrepreneur, and a CMO, and let us know what you're up to right now.
Sure. So I suppose this has to go back 25 years. That shows my age. Thank God I've had some Botox. I created Winston & Churchill Bulldog not long after I did my work experience with a pop group called Five Star, who were very, very popular in the 80s. And it was really to see them come from a real working class business to a number one pop group and have Lamborghinis and mansions in Ascot, Sunningdale, which is where I did my work experience. I kind of had my eyes open to anything's possible if you just really put your foot into it. And I think that gave me a really interesting mindset because none of my family are particularly entrepreneurial. They're very happy being tradespeople. There's nothing wrong in that. But I always had a different path and a career mindset than the rest of my family, which to my angst, my parents was always a bit of, God, why don't you be an electrician most of my life? It's such a steady job. I'm like, oh my God, kill me now. It's so boring. So with that in mind, music was always a huge passion of mine. Creating the dog was an amazing moment because it was this something called marketing, which I'd never experienced the word for back in 1993. And I thought, okay, how do I make a living? So I became a DJ because the DJ in the era of kind of Ministry of Sound and in the era I grew up in Kent was incredibly intertwined with artist managers, artists, tours, roadies. He had the kind of black book, and I was like, right, do you know what? Become a DJ and get the black book. It's not about being a DJ, but he has access to stuff that you're never, ever going to get involved with. So I did, and I got a job within 8 weeks. I was a main resident in the largest club in Kent, and soon was mixed from people like Take That, PJ and Duncan, E17, Eternal. Those were the big groups of the year. That year it was really bizarre.
I'd say 80% of the people that are listening are going, "Who? What? Who's this?"
Yeah, I know. That's the problem with it.
They were big. Let's just leave it at that. They were big.
They were big. So obviously we can say Ant and Deck. They probably prefer that one, not PJ and Duncan.
Yeah,
that works better. Sure. That then accelerated my career as a music producer into the industry, which I did 170 productions, 13 gold discs and number ones, 20 million records, and worked with Usher, Britney, Justin Timberlake, Tweet, Celine Dion, Phil Collins, Lionel Richie, everybody.
Cool.
Absolutely everybody. It was amazing. And I spent 16 years within that sector all across Los Angeles, London, Monaco. It was brilliant. It was a really interesting time. But in 2008, just before the crash came for the UK, I really thought about doing marketing as a proper qualification. And I had a friend who was running BPP at the time. They'd just opened a beautiful business school at Bank. And she said, look, you could come and study all of the classes and do CIM like kind of fast track. You could do it in half or the quarter of the time. So I did. And I got such a high mark that BPP asked me to join the company and train their corporate clients, which were Barclays, Deloitte, KPMG. I turned the job down 3 times because I really didn't want to get into education. But a bit like yourself, it started to tick a lot of boxes, and actually the value giving back and the stories I had to apply with case studies. And, I made the classroom very fun, and it ended up consuming me for about 6 years. In the meantime, I did my CIM postgrad. I got awarded a fellowship in 2012 for my work in industry. I went on to study an MBA. Did some amazing things education-wise. And then I thought, okay, you've got 16 years as a creative. You've now got 6 years as a bit of a corporate animal. You've done law, finance, people, teams. Let's try and mix the two together and become a really good CEO who can do both sides of the coin. So from that point, I went back into industry as a global head of marketing in Australia, New Zealand, London, Dubai. The next year, I managed a creative agency for 2 years and got it from the 131st in the Drum Awards to 5th in the UK. That put a lot of value on the business. They were very pleased with those 9 awards they won. I then got poached by Facebook's biggest online publisher, UNILAD, which wanted me to set up an entertainments division, be the head of marketing, be their global biz dev director, set up a record label. So no sleep for me for an entire year.
Sure.
But it was an amazing job. I'd never worked at such a fast-paced 5 to 10 million views on a video was normal, completely not normal. Phenomenon where we'd have every brand walking in the room, O2, Virgin, F1, Sky Sports, begging to work with us. And that was a lovely thing to experience. But I had a year out, and it was quite probably an interesting company when you look back on it in the press. And I joined Uni Days in New York and London, who wanted me to set up a student-friendly UNILAD, which hadn't really been done. Lad Bible were looking at going down the whole Instagram versions, and they've done it very, very well now. So that was the premise. I was there for about 4.5 months and decided that it was just far too corporate for me. So I resigned. And I went and did some freelancing. And I started to write a book, which had been toying with for about 15 years in my head. So what I've done in the meantime has been done a lot of Gen Z type of consultancy, which is how I met the Printt guys. They were doing very, very well as a number 1 printing app in the UK, but they wanted to get over 1 million users. So they hunted me down, and I went to a couple of meetings, and they created a CMO role from scratch and offered me the job within a week.
And that brings us to today.
that brings us to today, where I'm happy 6 months in, focusing on smashing those numbers. They've just done a large deal with Royal Mail Group, so they're going to have 10,000 printers in the UK. So the student part of the business is kind of a case study to the investors. So if we can smash the student numbers, which we are and we will, we'll be the largest print app brand in the world. So think of Airbnb for printing. That will be us.
That's excellent. I'm glad you finished on talking about Gen Z, because it leads me nicely on to the next question. And I think before you answer it, it's important to note that people get hung up on saying Gen Z and, well, it doesn't really exist, and I don't want to be part of that, and that's not me. But in all these things are and we've always had them. They're just general terms, like we've had baby boomers and all that kind of stuff. Yeah. So whatever we're talking about here, we're not saying that it's categorizing everybody. It's just a generalist term for people born in a particular era. So
correct.
What's Gen Z all about?
So that's actually quite an easy question, because I've just done a white paper on it for work.
There you go.
And I've got 4 keynote speakerships to do this year, which is all around the same subject. So I'm getting quite a famous name in this era. So Gen Z are, let's put them in a badge, because that's what Facebook likes to do, and Instagram and Snapchat is. They're 12 to 24 as a rough barrier. They are technologists first. So they are very au fait with every part of technology. They're the first part of the human race that's been that exposed to it naturally. They are very, very clever at working out advertising, which is an advert, versus advertising, which is an editorial, versus an influencer taking it, or just a very good story. And they've been very good at getting ad blockers into their technology and causing us marketers quite a nightmare when we try and target them with video adverts or animated GIFs. So they're super smart. They're tech savvy. They're not as there's been a lot of press about millennials recently about how they were the throwaway generation. I think it's a bit unfair. But Gen Z grew up through quite a difficult period where money wasn't as fluent, and values such as LGBT, diversity, plastics in the ocean, and social good causes such as mental health and pride have become an enormous part of their DNA. And it's really, really important that all brands understand this, because if you don't have, I wouldn't even call it a CSR policy, if you don't have a moral structure embedded into your culture and your corporate philosophy, you're out in the next 5 years. Because this lot are, by 2020, there'll be 40% of the planet within an expenditure type of scenario. So from a revenue point of view, they are the most important market coming through. The other really interesting to say about them is they're not brand loyal. Just because they bought Nike yesterday, they might never buy Nike for another 5 years. They will try absolutely every brand until they're satisfied. And what they do, like no other generation, is they'll read a review maybe on the App Store, they'll read a review from a blogger, they'll read a review from the Daily Mail, they'll read a review from Lad Bible, UNILAD, wherever it's gone, and they'll make their own mind up on about 10 different points of view. So having your 5-star Trustpilot, your TripAdvisors are so important to converting the sale and building trust with them. They read everything.
Nicely put.
How does that sound?
That's Gen Z sorted. Yeah, I'm currently reading it. I don't know who's written it, so forgive me, but currently reading a paper on Gen Z, and it's really interesting because it's essentially saying that they're almost the polar opposite generation of each other. They want to be included in everything, but they want to be their individual selves.
That's right.
And again, it's just a demographic that's just got different styles, and I've never once believed that this is a lazy generation by any way, shape, or form.
Oh no,
far from it. I think they're so switched on, and we haven't had a generation that has been this switched on ever.
No. And we are talking about a generation that will, in the same instance, get the app for KFC and get 7 stars and get a free bargain bucket, and the day after go and buy a pair of 400 Yeezys. That's a good way of explaining them. They just want quality or things that make their life more special to them. They're apart from what people call this social media Instagrammer, they're actually a lot less self-conscious on Instagram and things. As they're buying it for themselves as well. They love great products. They like looking good. It makes them feel empowered, they get it. They're
Mm-hmm.
growing up in a world where everything's paintbrushed to the high hells, and they're kind of done with that as well. I mean, some of the big influencers, I find it very, very hard to work with brands because the engagement has fell off, because they're just so unbelievable. And these kids have worked out, shouldn't really call them kids, but they are to me, smart kids. They know it's not real. They know it's an advert, and they just completely block it.
So when you're looking at focusing a marketing strategy on this generation or on this audience, is there anything you need to consider compared to other types of demographics out there?
Yeah, there is. It depends on what sector you're in. So I'll talk to you about the tech one because I'm in it. And it's really interesting because with tech, there's kind of two methods you go to find out whether this tech industry is going to work. Is Google Play and App Store. And there's also some Google recommendations that kind of come after. That's the third point. And then maybe some Facebook. But it's really important that tech can look like a bit too good to be true. So, for instance, there's a lot of apps that are free, and then you get past, 3 edits of you, removing a freckle from your face or whatever you're doing on it, and you get, it's £10 to continue. That kind of stuff is very irritable to that generation. So that's why they go a lot into what I call review, because they really want to see if there's any catch. For instance, the business I'm running at the moment they did suffer from a lot of this is too good to be true. It's a scam. So one of the things I introduced back into Gen Z was personal selling. Something that my founders, who are really young, were like, what? Why would you do that? That sounds so 1980s. I was like, no, it's just relationship marketing. I just need to get back down to the ground at refreshers fairs and say, this app is for free. This is why. This is what it does differently. And you can print over there. And I transformed the business overnight with thousands of app downloads with a CPA of my wages and a bit of paper.
Brilliant. Moving on. 10 Downing Street.
Yes, okay. I'm there tomorrow.
Oh wow. Okay, well that's quite topical. Big challenge. Yes. Tell us about your work there. It seems miles away from Gen Z. This, so just explain.
It does. So behind the scenes, there are 300 people behind that black door, and they're there no matter what government's in place. And I'm a part of that system where if they want to know about educating the cabinet or a team on Snapchat, for instance, or Instagram stories, or what does swipe up mean, or can we make a brand more relevant, then they call me in. So sometimes I can do an hour presentation. Sometimes I'll work over the phone. A lot of the time it's briefing to go down there behind the gates and speak to some people. A very lovely team, very hard-working teams. The guys that look after kind of my interests have been there over a decade, so they're real stickers. They know what they're doing. And one of the obviously in the press, you'll see that I won an award, which is for they've got a really cool phone system behind the scenes, which is like a video phone. So they had a really odd culture where, obviously, because that building isn't the largest of buildings, so you could have a person less than a metre away through a wall in the other room, and they'd email each other, not get up and walk around the wall. Seriously. So they developed this phone system to just try and humanise the employment of the company inside, which was great because you could also take the phone home, so you could continue Skype calls as such in their tech world, and just get a bit more relational. So if you went to the cafe at lunchtime, you could say, "Oh, hi Bob, I saw you earlier on that group call." So the methodology was fabulous. It was really cool. But they have a marketing agency called GDS. They're quite famous. They've got over 300 staff, and they failed to come up with a name for the brand. So I was rushed in because they had a launch date, and they said, "Look, this is the system. We need a name, and we need a name that has real value, what it does, and it needs to explain on the tin." So in 7 minutes, I came up with the word antenna. And in the middle of antenna is TEN, as in 10 Downing Street. The AN on the front is inward communication, and the NA is outward communication. So it's two-way communication at number 10. And antenna was born, and I got a gold medal from the Prime Minister's office.
Get out.
Yeah.
That's a great story. That's unbelievable. And you're back there tomorrow probably for another gold award or something, I'm sure.
Well, probably another brief, if I'm honest. I don't get paid for this work. It's the most fantastic thing to get invited to. I was very lucky to be invited in the first place. I absolutely love the team behind the doors, and they joke at me and say, well, you're on the way to getting your OBE, so keep going.
Wow, brilliant. That's a great story. Right, I'm going to bring you back down to reality here and ask you a standard question. We mention a lot about creating content on this podcast, and how vital it is. How do you make content that's got impact?
Great question. So I think firstly, a lot of people go wrong with content. Let's do two sides. Let's do B2B and let's do B2C, because they are really, really different. So I think Instagram's made content a lot more easy to understand, because you can explain, if you haven't got an aspirational image, food, fitness, fashion, travel, you are not going to get the likes, looks, shares, comments, tag a friend within that platform. That has actually transcended to all other platforms, all of it. It's really set the benchmark. And it's nice that we've got a bit of thinking around the quality of the photograph and the creative. It's really nice that people are going, stop, let's think about what we're doing here visually, and actually try and A/B test it. Within the B2B world, I'm struggling a bit with that at the moment, because not as in my role, is everything looks the same. If I see another Salesforce style infographic, cartoon, clip art thing that bounces across the screen, it's just, I'd kind of prefer to listen to a 3-minute podcast of the CEO explaining me why his company's amazing, or her company, and or something from a Facebook Live. I just think it's really dull. So visualization for me is the number one. I think secondly, which is what I learned at UNILAD really quickly, is a lot of people that consume content might be at work and shouldn't be on their phone. They also might be on a train and don't want to annoy anyone. They might have forgot their headphones. So overlaying text on a video and or image with a call to action is the most important thing. Secondary to that, and what every marketer's forgotten, is you get on Southeastern trains or Southwestern trains, you click the Wi-Fi and it doesn't work. So as you're scrolling through Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, the content is probably lasting a second or two and stopping. So what that's done, I'll give you an example of what that looks like. So the bounce rate for video at the moment is 1.7 seconds. And I can send you the link and research around that. So if your call to action, let's say with Star Wars, and normally the trailer would be open at a lovely picture of the moon and then a spaceship coming towards us slowly with some stars. That can't happen anymore. It's probably in the first half a second got to open with the release date, 01/01/2019, for instance. So immediately you know when I need to go and see it, or I might want to tell someone that it's coming. And the second kind of frame at probably 1.0 seconds would be the most exciting bit of the film. So probably an enormous planet exploding. And it's that kind of stripping it back down to call to action, the most exciting content possible, overlaying with words and music that might be appropriate, but getting on with it. 10-second videos are doing really, really well.
You hold a CIM qualification, and you're quite prevalent within the CIM. How important is it to have that type of grounding in marketing?
Do you know what? I don't think I gave it enough kudos when I joined it. So I did because I had such industry experience, I didn't have to do the certificate levels. I went straight onto the diploma. And I did find the first kind of module, which was marketing planning process, a lot to take on. I had all the application in my head, but learning things like Porter's 5 Forces was alien to me, and Ansoff Matrix. I was like, my God, what am I going to do with all this stuff? And I actually found the diploma quite tough to get my head around. I was probably doing it at speed dating, which is typical of me, full on, let's get it done, smash it. But I think the interesting thing to put here is when I did the postgrad, I'll be real honest, I felt absolutely dumb as a marketer as I was going through it. It kind of ticked so many boxes, because they tell you strategic marketing plan was like, it's a buzzword. No, it's not. Oh my God, it's not. It just literally makes your head become a very clever businessman. If there's nothing else I've learned better, is it just questions everything. Risk, factors, markets, microclimates, everything that's kind of economically going on around your world, you're kind of suddenly aware, like you just had a kryptonite switch on the back of your brain and you've now got green eyes looking at the marketing world going, hang on a minute, that's not right. That looks so good. I don't believe that. Let's pull that apart. And I just felt overwhelmed doing my postgrad. And I really think that shaped me to be an incredible marketer after doing that point. I mean, obviously creatively I was doing well, but I think as a academic business marketer, I give a lot of props to the CIM for educating me.
That's really great to hear. I think I've had conversations before about whether the qualifications are still worth it, and you get these bite-sized chunks of marketing and how to do this and how to do that, and I think they've got their place. But in terms of the actual strategy behind it and the details and going into specifics and sitting down and researching, that's when the CIM qualification comes into its own.
I agree. I think as well, a really good example is when I went to Printt, they'd never had a marketing plan. And I literally went back to the fundamentals of some of my strategic marketing postgrad. And I without putting the models in, I kind of give them a 25-page business document that was almost like a white paper on how we were going to run the business. Mm-hmm. The board were blown away. There's some big investors involved, and they're like, who wrote this? Like, this is different league. We're going to go places. This has got everything we want in it. It's got more and above we've ever thought of. It's challenged every perception we're doing. It just, the tone of voice is completely professional on what we need to be doing and why. And it's just that I've taken with me. And I think it's super important. I agree. There's a place of bite size, but they're top ups. I think if you can get into a degree and you can write your 4 reports about a brand you love or even your own business, see, I'm really flexible with that. You take that with you for life, and I have done.
Absolutely. And I just want to end with these more detailed questions by just discussing Street Soccer Foundation and what that's all about.
So I got approached about 2 years ago now, whether I would help a Kent business try and get 25,000 prize money from Persimmon Homes by helping them do a Facebook ad campaign. So I met with the CEO, and he explained to me how there was 2 people in the company and they had 100% success rate on turning homeless teenagers into either getting a house or a full-time job. And I'd never heard a stat like it. And I was really moved. And I said, you did that on your own, 2 people? He's like, yeah. He said, we're just looking to build a bit of a team and get some funding. I said, well, I'll tell you what I'll do is I'll join as CMO. I'll do it for free for the rest of my life. And I'm going to write you a marketing strategy. I said, the first thing we're going to do is stop talking about poor me and the poor homeless. We're going to celebrate your tone of voice as in we are 100% successful at rehoming these children back from the most horrific backgrounds, just really rocked me, into professionals that are working and enjoying life again and can go and start a family. It's just the most rewarding thing I've ever done. It's great.
If I had a round of applause button, I'd be using it now, but we're not that technically advanced on here, so just a well done from me.
Thank you.
We'll have to suffice. So, moving very swiftly on to some quick fire questions. Are you ready for these?
Yeah. Okay. Oh gosh.
Okay, let's do it. Name one must-read business book.
I'm going to say, this is going to be cliche because I think everyone's probably said this, it's the Richard Branson Virgin book. His first one he did. He's done a few since, and I've forgotten the original name.
Yeah, it's some pun on Virgin. I know that.
It is some pun on Virgin, but it's just refreshing how entrepreneurial that book was and innovative in its time. Mm-hmm. But that's him as an individual. I'm not particularly a person that loves these kind of huge, deep TED Talk books on how you do stuff. I like people that have applied practices throughout their career in a book and tell you how hard it is, how rubbish it's been, but what you do to get out of it. That's really useful as an empowering book.
Yeah, that's cool. What was the last thing you Googled?
I think it would have been a travel holiday to the Maldives.
Ugh, boring.
Yeah.
What is your most used app at the moment?
I'm not going to say my one for work. I reckon that's going to be. Let me just have a check. It's going to be Rightmove because we're thinking of moving. So I've been on it every day for a couple of months. So it's the most used. But I think that's probably not the answer you wanted. The app I live on is Instagram.
Yeah,
I adore it.
I think the Rightmove app, as soon as you're looking to move, it's just constant.
It's the one.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
What's your top tip for anyone studying a CIM professional qualification?
Read as much industry articles as you can. So sign up for alerts with the Drum. Very, very. I think the Drum is the number one place for a student and marketer that doesn't have time potentially to digest everything that's going on in the world. But the Drum is a really lovely take on business, career moves, industry insight, and every morning you get an update. So at the very worst, you get a sense of industry trends, movers and shakers, and what's bubbling. And I think the more you can get into industry style press, you become a really strong marketer because it will influence your decisions.
Yeah, couldn't agree more. So final question, most important question.
Oh gosh.
Top of the pops or smash hits?
Oh, top of the pops.
Boom, yes, of course. Got to be.
Sorry, did you say Spotify and Amazon Music?
Yeah.
For the kids.
Sorry. Yeah. Let's rephrase that just so people know. So let's see. I'm going to say, well, because I use one of these. So Spotify or Deezer?
It would have to be Deezer for me.
Yes, same here. Get in.
Yeah.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
Love it. So, Kevin, if people want to get in touch with you, where should they go?
The best place is my LinkedIn profile. It's got my work email address on it. I'm very happy to talk to anyone. I mentor about 10 CIM people a year as well. So I often get people come forward with questions. People often want some jobs. So I'm very active in helping people get into the industry and get some advice. So LinkedIn is the best one.
Kevin, been an absolute pleasure talking to you today. Thank you so much for doing this.
Thank you, Peter. Cheers.
Wow, what an interview. What a legend Kevin is. Thanks so much for joining us again, Kevin. So these are my takeaways from that really brilliant chat. Who are Gen Z? We all have categories we fit in, and Gen Z are no different. The 12 to 24-year-olds that have known nothing but a world with digital technologies at its heart, and have the knack of working out the truth from the lies, which I think we could all do with a little bit of now and again, especially on social with fake news and all that rubbish. But the main takeaway here, especially for marketers, is that they are not brand loyal and have a great affinity to those organisations that champion the cause. So although there isn't any brand loyalty, they do gravitate towards those organisations that stand for something true. When everything looks the same on social channels, it's important to be different. Different with your creative. Remember, visualization is key to being different. As Kevin said, you only have about 1.7 seconds to gain the interest and engagement of your audience. So make this 1.7 seconds exciting. And finally, even Kevin doesn't believe he understood the power of a CIM qualification when he was actually studying for his. Thank God he said that. Researching and understanding marketing strategy and the theory behind it means you start to become aware of the various elements such as risk, factors, markets, microclimates, and what is going on around you. And this is the basis, the core fundamental for where you're planning your marketing strategy should start. So let's go over McKinsey's 7S's model. Now this model is made up of 7 internal factors. Wow, who thought of that name? And these factors need to be aligned if your strategy is going to be successful. If one of these elements is impacted, the rest feel that impact. So these 7 S's are made up of hard elements, as in they are easier to define, such as strategy, structure, and systems, and the softer elements, shared values, skills, style, and staff. Now, in reviewing each of these elements in the framework, it becomes apparent how well an organisation will perform throughout a set strategic approach, where any issues may occur and how they can be addressed. Remember, if one of these 7 S's is impacted, changed, updated, amended, it will have an impact on the rest. So it really is crucial you understand the links between them. Other areas that this framework looks at and addresses are as follows. It looks to improve the company performance by showing synergies between all the S's. It examines the likely effects of future changes within a company internally. It can align departments and processes during mergers or acquisitions, or just throughout a strategy. And finally, it can determine how best to implement a proposed marketing strategy. And that, in its essence, is why McKinsey's 7 S's framework or model, whatever you want to call it, is so important. Thank you so much for joining us today on Marketing Study Lab. It really means the world that you're listening to this out there. And hopefully I've provided you some value. If you're looking to know more about what Marketing Study Lab does and is about, go to marketingstudylab.co.uk or get in touch with me personally, LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter, or feel free to email me at peter@marketingstudylab.co.uk. Happy marketing.